So I lived in West Quad, fifth floor, no elevator. So a lot of stair climbing. I roomed blind, and our floor. This was in the early days of co-ed dorms, and even co-ed floors, and the early days of what they called then 24-hour open, which meant there were no longer any restrictions on females and males parts of the dorm or rooms or anything like that, which my older brothers told me was a gigantic change from what had been the case. And I would say this, my oldest brother started at Michigan in 1960, next brother in 1965, and me in 1970. And those are three distinct generations, as much as a 20-year gap between would be, maybe in the 30s and 40s or the 80s to today, at least in my opinion. So anyway, our floor was actually, we were told, was going to be a women's floor, but fewer women than they thought signed up. So it turned out to be at the last minute a guy's floor, and they threw virtually everybody on the floor had room blind. So a lot of new people that didn't know anybody, which was kind of good in a way because we all kind of got to know each other. So I was in the marching band. So my first week or so was strictly band classes, and being in the marching band and having once everybody else moved in, rehearsal every afternoon, and sometimes additional rehearsals in the morning on non-class days, meant that I was not in the dorm when a lot of the people were kind of getting to know each other. So I never felt I made a couple of friends that actually turned out to be ongoing close friends from the dorm, but I didn't feel like I was really part of the core group that got to be great friends in the dorm. Mm-hmm. It was a very interesting time in that all of the campus activism, Black Action movement, anti-war movement were huge, as you may know, in Ann Arbor. It was Ann Arbor and Berkeley were probably the two hottest hotbeds. And I really feel like my class, that started in the fall of 1970, moved away from that. We were more of the beginning of the me decade, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you might say, but not a lot of political activism. The draft was abolished about that time, so I do know a couple guys that did end up going into the Army. That was a gigantic thing, because Vietnam was still hot, when I started college. And so if you were not excited about going to Vietnam, there were a lot of lengths you would go to keep your student deferment. So it was very much a transition time from Ann Arbor being a hotbed of student activism to more of an introspective turn, you might say. And I felt like I was kind of right in the middle of that, and I felt some of the activism. I actually applied for a conscientious objectorship, which never got acted on because I was never reclassified 1A, so it wasn't accepted or rejected. But I think Ann Arbor was very much in a transition while I was there. Average, but not terrific. I mean, I think I got a 2.5 my first semester, which was pretty disappointing. I'd been a B+ student in high school, and I would say this, that I think there's been a fair amount of grade inflation from that day to this. So a 3-point average meant you were a good student then. I'm not sure it means the same thing today when you can get 4.8 grade point average because of honors points. We really didn't have any of that. So here's what I would say about the academics in Ann Arbor. I had some terrific professors, and also the level of academic and intellectual involvement was high. A lot of really smart people, and so that is what I think made Ann Arbor a unique place. When my oldest brother got to Michigan, one of the things you can tell is just by looking at pictures of people, brush cuts and suit and ties. And he had a great experience at Michigan. Also met a girl and got married there. And but it was rigorous. my next brother came in '65, and immediately he sort of came from that, what I just described, and then was on the cusp of all the changes that you've read in your history books now about the 1960s, and he kind of drank all that in and became especially active politically. Ended up refusing induction into the draft when he was got his induction notice, which has had an impact on his life ever since. But he would probably say not a bad impact. It got him even more engaged politically, and he remains so today. And again, when I started, and I both personally had all that sort of baggage or history with me from within my own family, but also experiencing it as the 60s had given way to the 70s, and it was a definite difference. I mean, I just feel like we were less. We had an expression actually in the fraternity house: "Let's have a beer and forget the whole thing." That was, and I don't know if we made it up, but I wouldn't say that was our overall philosophy in a nutshell, but it was something we'd say kind of jokingly. But the drive toward passionate activism in a cause, at least in the way in my own circle and in how I viewed the university, it really ebbed right beginning when I got there. A lot of hippies. There was a guy on my floor in West Quad who arrived. His nickname was Greaseball, and that's what he looked like. He did not touch a hair on his head or face the entire term. And so when he left, his hair was down to here, and he had a beard out to here. And he's probably not the only one that was like that. I mean, letting your hair get long was a very big thing. Another friend of mine stayed when he went home for Christmas and knew that his parents were going to tell him to go get a haircut. He stayed in bed every day until the barbershops had closed, so he wouldn't have to. So that maybe gives you a little bit of a flavor of what was starting to go on there. And I look back on it with some, I don't know about regret, but I think we were a pretty self-centered group, and in a weird kind of way, maybe shallow in a certain sense compared to what had gone before us. And then by the time I was within a year or two of getting out of school, it had changed a lot more, and that era kind of finished, and Ann Arbor was much more collegiate looking again. You didn't have a bunch of long-haired hippies all over the place. Still some, but it was starting to sort of get back into more of what was again becoming the mainstream then, I guess. I would say that University of Michigan today, what concerns me is I question whether the academic rigors and the dedication of students is what it might have once been. Don't know for sure about that, but and again, I only have a little slice of what's there, but I guess I would try to put it in a positive fashion and say I hope that students today at Michigan appreciate they're in a great place with a great history, and they need to continue to do the university proud by giving their best academic effort. And I would say that college shouldn't be a 3.5 or a 4-day week situation. It should be a 5-day a week situation. My brothers talked about having Saturday classes when they were at Michigan, and they'd say, "Oh, you're lucky you didn't get any Saturday classes." Today, I'm not sure there's any Friday classes, and that's ridiculous to me. The academic week shouldn't end on Thursday at 4. So that's an old guy, talking about the way it once was. But I just hope that Michigan students today appreciate where they are, and will be able to look back and say they gave it a 5-day a week or more effort academically, because they'll benefit from it, and so will the university.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.